Okay, Kaylin. So I told you offline that having you on the show, one, I think it'll benefit our audience greatly. But I was kind of selfishly driven because we are starting or we are launching, well, dare I say launch, we are releasing a product and courses starting in the new year. And in the background, we've been like, okay, what's our launch plan? What are we doing for this? Blah, blah, blah. I'm doing everything behind the scenes right now. But you say you can make even millions from a course-based business and even double your sales this month without launching. And I was just like, that doesn't make any sense. All I've been doing recently is trying to figure out a launch plan. So let's break this down. What is the difference between launching and selling your course on autopilot?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked that, because in the online space, there's a lot of confusion between what those terms actually mean. And I'm actually going to go a level higher and talk about the difference between launching and evergreen. Because the truth is that a lot of times people think that launching refers exclusively to live events and evergreen is exclusively automated. But in reality, you can do both in either one. So launching can have things that are set up that are automated and they can be live. Evergreen can be live or automated. Now, I do specialize in our program helping people sell on autopilot. So we don't specialize in teaching people live events or anything like that. But the main difference between launching and evergreen is the business model itself. So when you're launching, it typically requires maybe 2 or even 3 months of intense list building and content distribution that's all leading up to what's called an open cart. And the open cart is the period of time when you are allowing people to enroll in your course. And that open cart period can last anywhere between, 5 days, 7 days, right? Then nobody can buy until your next launch, which is maybe 4 months later or even a year later. And what many course creators find is that when their launch ends, so does all of the momentum that they really worked so hard to generate, right? And it's radio silence for the business until you begin the launch cycle all over again. And it's no surprise that when you think of it that way, it is a very high-risk way of selling your course, especially for course creators who are making less than $1 million a year. They have a tiny team or no team at all. They're basically just getting started and pretty much a non-existent ads budget. And so I always tell people that if your course is generating less than $1 million per year, the number one thing that you need to focus on is how to generate consistent revenue so that you can get some real traction in your business. Now, the difference between launching and an evergreen model is that with an evergreen model, you are able to enroll students into your programs on an ongoing basis, not just a couple times a year, which is great because it really puts you in a position where you can grow your business over time. You can collect data to see what marketing messages are really resonating with my audience right now, determine what needs to be refined. You basically have more opportunity, more practice to get better.
And are you referencing courses that are like you sign up and then it's self-paced, or are you talking about courses that require small group meetings every week and things like that?
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because another common misconception about evergreen is that, or even selling on autopilot, is that it's totally hands-off. And our clients are creating a variety of online programs. So some of the courses that they're selling are strictly content, right? So they're just selling access to the content. It could be lifetime access. It could be access to the content for a limited time. And then they have a membership backend. And then the other people in our programs are selling courses that come with either a community component and or some kind of coaching component, whether that looks like a weekly live call or a monthly live call, kind of depending on what the needs are of your students. And so people get access to the content. They are able to go at it at their own pace. Some programs drip out content on a weekly basis. So you'll have, a new lesson each week. Some give immediate access, to the full content right away. But you're able to attend either on a, twice per week, once per week, once per month, whatever it is, call where you can, if you are wanting feedback on something, or if you're struggling with implementation or need clarity on something, you're able to submit your question and get your question answered.
Okay. So so for people that you could attend live things and all of that, and you say you just want a consistent flow, the nice thing about the typical launch strategy is kind of that building up that scarcity and only have 5 spots left and this and that. How do you do that without the quote unquote launch? But also, how do you manage a huge flow of people and maintain that personalization that people might want to be getting from those courses?
Yeah. So one of the most important things when you're selling something on autopilot, when your product is evergreen, is that you are still giving people a window of opportunity to purchase, right? And so you have people entering your sales cycle for the first time at all kinds of different times, right? Day after day. But each of those people is on a customized path. And so each of those people has a unique, based on when they entered your sales cycle, a unique window of opportunity to make a purchase. And the reality is that no one wants to be hemming and hawing about whether or not they want to buy for weeks, months, or years, right? And so the prospect appreciates that, because then it's okay, here's my window of opportunity to purchase. I'm either in or out. If I'm out for now, then we have additional automation nurture sequences that continue to give more valuable free content and then invite them back into the fold later on.
Okay, Joe, I feel like my brain's going to explode with everything that I've been thinking with our quote unquote launch. And now I'm I need to go back to the drawing board, excuse me. So, Caitlin, how do people know if they're ready to quit launching and start selling their course on autopilot instead?
Yeah. So one of my beliefs, the way that I kind of walk around the world is that being ready is a choice. And so you can choose to be ready for just about anything whenever it is that you decide. And I know that, especially when you're starting a new business, that can feel a little bit scary, right? Because the future is uncertain and we don't know. And wouldn't it be nice if we had a handy dandy checklist that we could check off and tell ourselves, oh, you know what? I meet all of these requirements and that's going to guarantee my success. But that's not the way growing a business works, right? And so what I will say is, if you are someone who, number one, you desire more time freedom, right? Maybe you're someone who maybe you've launched before, maybe you haven't launched before, and you're just kind of dreading the whole process, but you're thinking to yourself, you know what? This is going to be a lot of work. This is going to require a big ads budget. This is going to require me to increase the size of my team, to put more money into the creating all of these new launch resources. The reality is that launching is expensive. Launching has a high cost. And whether you are launching a service or a course or coaching or whatever it is, it's really important that as small business owners, we're able to mitigate those costs and to use things like automation so that we don't need to have a big team. I remember one of the courses that I first launched in my first couple years of business was it cost me $20,000 to prepare for that launch. And guess how much money I made during that launch? It was $20,000. so it was a flat break even, right? And the reality was that because I had told my audience, this is I'm launching this, once this year, for the next few months, what was I supposed to do, right? I had to scramble around, create other offers, because I wasn't able to sustain income for the additional months. And that was kind of a turning point for me where I was like, okay, this is too risky. This is not, I don't have outside investors pouring money into a safety net account or anything. This is just, not going to work. And so if you're someone who really wants that flexibility, if you want to be able to really open up your schedule and really focus on things like being visible, like delivering a great experience for your clients, all those kinds of things, then it really makes sense to automate your sales process. The other thing that the other reason why a lot of people decide that they're ready to just, quit the launch roller coaster is because they're really looking to increase their revenue. So I remember, like I said, when I was launching my course, I felt like I kept coming up against the same revenue ceiling. And I saw other people that were having these big, $1 million years, this and that. And I wasn't able to break through. And I know that some people love launching, they're successful with launching, and that's awesome. That's great for them, right? Like, I'm a firm believer there's no one right way to do something. But for me, it wasn't allowing me to hit those big revenue goals. And it wasn't until I quit launching that course and I switched to selling it on autopilot that I was finally able to hit that $1 million year. And it happened within less than a 12-month period. And for me, I think part of the reason why I was able to generate that momentum is because I was focused on getting really good at selling that one thing with that one funnel, honing the marketing message over time. And I think that as small business owners, as course creators who are new to this, it's really important that we have the opportunity to do that.
Question. So I understand the difference between a launch model where you're saying, hey, we're getting ready to launch this thing. You sign up, get there's a limited space or whatever, and then you sell it, and then you wait and you do it again later, so that there's a use it or lose it, you snooze, you lose kind of model.
Right.
And you switch to evergreen, which means anytime I want to buy your product, I can. Besides that, what else changes about your approach in terms of, say, the marketing and the selling process? Is there anything else that changes, or is it just, it's just available anytime?
So one of the biggest mistakes that course creators make is that they think that they can simply repurpose their live launch content into an automated funnel and just let it run. And so that's where a lot of times you'll hear people say like, oh, well, I don't want to evergreen my course yet. I don't want to start selling it on autopilot because I haven't live launched it yet. And so I know I need to live launch it yet. But the sales experience for a prospect coming into your world is very different in an automated funnel versus something live. And because of that, you have to make changes in your sales and marketing content itself. So it's not what works well on a live webinar is not going to work well on an automated webinar. Inside of an evergreen automated funnel, everything has to be crystal clear. You have to be very clear about what it is that you are offering. Now, this is in contrast to perhaps a big live event where you can almost intentionally be a little bit vague or do things that really spark curiosity because that will trigger your audience to ask a question. And that's part of the show, right? They're asking, and then you answer it and then go into more detail. And you're not able to do that when you're selling with an automated webinar, when it's selling evergreen. And so the messaging has to be very tight and it has to be really clear. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important that, like, when you are selling something automated and evergreen, that you are really looking at the data and you are taking the time to see, okay, like these numbers look good. These numbers need to improve. Let's try this to tweak this. And it's just kind of a series of small tweaks over time to get the whole thing running.
Okay, so I just want to clarify because I'm not 100% clear getting there. But so when you did this webinar you spoke of, where you can be a little bit, mysterious and get people to ask questions, that's the marketing free webinar to get people to buy the course?
Yes.
Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay, but then if you're not having a live webinar to get people to buy the course because they can buy anytime they want, now you've got some content, videos, some kind of messaging of some kind that they're going through, and they need you don't want to lose them. So, okay, just wanted to clarify that.
So it's basically, it is an automated webinar, but it's completely different content than what you would share inside of a live webinar.
Because nobody
People can still come in, they can choose their time. Your attendance rates with an automated webinar are going to be 2, 3, even 4 times higher than what you see in a live webinar. And that's because people are able to choose their own time, all of that.
Got it. Thank you.
That makes so much sense. Well, Kaylin, you were talking about some mistakes that people make. Are there any other big mistakes that you see people make when they go to automation, and also, or even like misconceptions that people have that you can debunk right now?
Yeah. So I think one of the big misconceptions about Evergreen is that a lot of times people put so much pressure on themselves to get it right the first time. And I think that comes from kind of the launch mindset, right? Of feeling like, when you're launching, you do have to make that work because you only have a short amount of time to make it work. And then, you're not selling it for months later. So it really needs to work. Whereas with an evergreen model, you're able to make consistent improvements over time. And so one of the big mistakes that I see people make is that they put it off because they're like, well, I want to perfect my course first, or I want to, I want to keep, testing it out live until this and that is ready. But when you're doing that, it's taking away some of the benefits that come with Evergreen, where if you're selling a product evergreen, even if it's the first time that you're ever selling it, you're able to optimize and shift things over time. As students are moving through your course, you're able to make adjustments to the course material itself after you see kind of the way that your students are behaving inside of your course, right? And so I think that one of the big mistakes people are making is they're really telling themselves that they have to, everything has to be perfect before they embark upon this, evergreen adventure.
So for solopreneurs, or a lot of our audience, like you say, if you're not hitting $1 million course business, you need to be doing this. But for some of these people, since they're running the show themselves, $200,000 would be
totally
wonderful. Like that's perfect for them. They don't need $1 million business.
Yeah.
But what are people doing differently if they're making $200K versus $1 million? Where do you see the biggest difference, and why are some so much more successful than others when they might just be doing this? They may be doing the same thing.
They're focusing in. So time after time, I have clients come to me. They have a 6-figure business, and they're like, how do I get to the million? How do I get past this to the $1 million mark? And the reality is they're doing too much. They're selling a lot of different courses. They've kind of tried what they're doing is they're looking at what people who already have multi-million-dollar online course businesses, and they're trying to replicate that for themselves. But you're not there yet, right? And if you're not there yet, you don't need to be doing that stuff. And if you do that stuff, it's literally going to break your business, right? And so I tell people, stay as simple as possible. Have your offer, focus on selling that one offer with one funnel, like get really great at that. And doing that alone is what you need to be focused on in order to get to 6 figures. That is the exact same thing that you need to be focused on in getting to 7 figures. And what happens is that sometimes people get a bit of success, right? They make it to that 6-figure mark, and then they're like, okay, so now I need to start like introducing other products, and I need to like do this and that. And if you kind of think about, for a small business owner, you have a limited budget, you have a limited amount of time, energy, resources. And so if you're spreading yourself very thin, if you're trying to create new products, create new ways to deliver on each of those products, create new marketing funnels for each of those products, create new sales funnels for each of those products. And if instead you were to hone your attention and really focus on getting great at that one thing, that's really the key to be able to reach 6 figures and your first 7 figures. Now, after you get to your first 7 figures, then it becomes more about like hiring a team and things like that, because you need to start having help to do that. But if you're selling on autopilot, you don't need a big staff. You don't need a big team.
So I think that is what you just said is like a solopreneur's dream. So many people now are trying to create a business that supports their life rather than become gazillionaires. And so the idea of productizing like what their offer is instead of trading their time for money sounds so dreamy. So let's say they're like, I'm so good at selling. I'm looking at it. So
sure. Yeah.
I'm like addicted to Spindrift right now.
Yeah.
Not sponsored, but like, but like they're trying to sell sparkling water and they're so good at that. And they can teach people how to sell sparkling water really well. And they're really niched down in that. So they know they have their focus. What would be the first thing you would recommend they do to double their sales this month? They're like, I got this. I want to productize this. Tell me what to do right now.
Yeah. So the first thing that you want to do, number one, is make sure that your marketing is speaking to the problems that the ideal people for your course are actively having. And so what happens a lot of times is that course creators get excited about their course, right? And so they're like, and the best thing about my course is this. And so they're constantly talking about that. But their audience isn't interested in that thing. They're interested in buying your course because it solves this problem over here. But you don't even talk about that because you're not aware that that is an important problem for that person, right? And so one of the most tangible things that you need to do if you want to double your course sales, in the next 30 days is to get on the phone with everyone who has gone through the funnel and who has not bought. And it's not a sales call. You're not doing it to turn that no into a yes. You're doing it because you need to understand why people are going through your funnel, why they're understanding, hey, you know what? Like this course sounds awesome. I think this core works, but I don't think it's going to work for me because X, Y, or Z. You need to understand what that X, Y, or Z is, because if you do, and if that is something that your course addresses and can help people with, then you're able to overcome their objections in your sales and marketing content, right? You're able to speak more to those specific pain points, to those unique problems. Now, you might get on the phone with someone and determine, oh, you know what? We don't address the specific problems that they had in that course. That's okay, right? Because your course is not meant to serve everyone. But a lot of times as course creators, we hear the common objection, oh, I would love to enroll, but I don't have time. Or I'd love to enroll, but I don't have money. And the reality is that could be absolutely true, right? Like it might just be out of their budget, and that's okay. They might just not have time to do it, and that's okay. But for a lot of people, they're telling you that because they're kind of trying to let you down easy. Like they don't want to get into all the specifics of it. And if you really have a conversation with them, they're going to tell you, this program sounds awesome. And I can totally see how it worked for all these people, but I don't think it's going to work for me because of like one specific reason. And if you interview enough people, you're going to start to see some commonalities in what those specific reasons are. You're going to start to hear the same ones over and over again. And that alone is one of the most powerful things that you can do for your sales. And I think, I know I'm an introvert. I think a lot of course creators are introverts. Like we like to sit in our cave and create content all day. And so I think that doing that is a big ask for course creators because feel kind of weird to get on the phone with a stranger. But one of the things that you can actually do in order to make that process easier is whether it's inside of a funnel or inside of a live launch, whatever it is, send out a survey after the sales cycle is closed, right? So if you have a funnel, you can automate this so it goes out to people at the right time. If it's live, then you just give it to everyone at the same time. A survey that asks a couple questions. The first question is, if I could wave a magic wand and change anything about this offer to make it a no-brainer for you to purchase today, what would it be? Now, there's two things in there. The first is no-brainer, right? You don't want to know what would make it sound a little bit better. What would make this offer better? They're just going to get into their opinions and this and that. This is what would make it a no-brainer, like an automatic yes for you. And the other is you're asking them, what would make it a no-brainer for you to buy today, right? Because if you're saying today, that's going to elicit some of the real objections that they have, right? Because it's kind of putting a timeline on it, because you want to know what is actually preventing them from doing it today. The second question that you want to ask is, would it be is a qualifying question. So you want to ask because you don't want to get on the phone with people who are like, let's say you teach a course about how to grow tomatoes in your garden or whatever. If your course is about that, you don't want to get on the phone with someone who's like, yeah, I just don't like tomatoes. I was just, curious about what this was or whatever. That's a waste of time for you to be on the phone with them. So you need a qualifying question. Like, are you, it could be a multiple choice. Like, I am interested in starting a tomato garden in the next week, in the next month, in the next year. And then they pick, right? So you can kind of see like what the level of urgency, and you want to, then the next question is, would it be okay if I got on a call with you to just ask you a few more, market research questions? If so, put your email address here. And so then you're only reaching out to people who have said, hey, I want to give you, I'm willing to talk to you. And, you're not going to get 90% of people to say, yes, please, I would love to talk to you. It'll be a handful of people initially, but that alone, just getting on the phone with 3 or 5 people, plus being able to see all the other responses that you get, is going to make such a big difference. I see people after people come through our program who have a great course, whether it's teaching people how to sell sparkling water. And it was funny when you said, I don't remember if you said, we had one person come through and teach a course about how to start a vending machine business. So when you said sparkling water, I was like, yeah, they do literally do that. But when you're doing that, you have to make sure that your message is clear, and you are speaking to the problems that people are actively trying to solve. So they're already searching the internet all over, being like, how do I solve this problem? Right? It's not something that they just stumble upon.
Can I ask a question? And
yeah.
This isn't a trick question.
Okay.
It's just something I'm really curious about, because I love what you're saying, this idea of talking to people that didn't buy.
Yeah.
Because it's so true that so many times we look at what we're offering and we go, oh, it's this. And we might be right at the end of the day, but it might not be what people are resonating with at that point.
Yeah.
We're talking about this and they're thinking about this one little thing. But one of the things that I know is true is that people typically buy based on emotional reasons, and they justify it using logic.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, with this process of talking to people, do you have any thoughts on kind of teasing out, the emotional components, which may be the bigger driver to actually, purchase now, versus the logical ones that they may say to you, but then still wouldn't drive them without the emotional component? Is there anything there?
So I think that the emotional component comes from a strong desire to solve that problem. So they have to be, it's not your job to take someone who is not even aware they have a problem and bring them into an emotional state where they're like, oh my gosh, I need this right now. And so part of the job of marketing is to create content that is meeting people where they are. And so it's attracting people that are closer to that buy position. These are people who they've probably already done other things to try to solve that problem on their own. Maybe they've listened to podcasts. Maybe they've, bought books. Maybe they've bought courses before. Maybe they hired someone to try to do it for them. All these different things. Those are the people that you're talking to. And so I think what happens for a lot of course creators is because they want to help so many people, their marketing content starts to take a turn, and they almost begin focusing on trying to convince people that they have a specific problem. But doing that it's a complete waste of time and resources, because it's not your job to convince someone that they have that problem. Like, these are people that are already, like, they're aware they have the problem. They're looking for it. They're looking for solutions. And as long as your content is created with that specific person in mind, then you're going to be able to they're going to feel seen and heard, and they're not going to go through your content and be like, yeah, I already know I have this problem. Like, what's next? You know what I mean?
So focusing on the pain point, the people with the pain point that you're solving, and talking to them. Okay,
and
that makes sense.
And not just who have the pain point, but who are actively looking for solutions. Because there are a lot of people who are experiencing the pain of something, but it's not enough to make them take action, right? It's like kind of like a low grade pain, or it's like they're like, meh, like I have this annoying problem, but I'm not actively looking for solutions right now. Then that's not your person, right?
Oh, Caitlin, so much good information like, that I'm trying to wrap my brain around right now. So if I'm getting into our audience's mindset, and for me, like so much of what you're saying, I feel like we could have the Rocky music playing behind you. And it's like, all right, I had this idea for a course. Now, like Caitlin said I should do it like this, so I'm going to do it like this. And they have that momentum. But obviously we are just scratching the surface here today. And there's so much more we can dive into. You were talking funnels, everything.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you discuss in your own courses.
Yeah.
So I want to give you a chance to plug your own stuff. Where can people find you if they're taking the carrot?
Yeah.
And they want to run with it.
Yeah. So the best place to learn more is my website. So you can go to CaitlinBacher.com. And on that website, you'll find a link to a free masterclass that I have. It's called How to Generate Launch Size Revenue Without Launching. You can sign up for that. I also have a solo podcast that I host. Usually sometimes it's once a week. Sometimes it's once every other week. I don't have any guests or anything. It's just me kind of chatting about whatever's on my mind related to evergreen and automation.
Awesome. Well, you help people and so many solopreneurs build the courses of their dreams and find success with it. So we have to ask, because we ask all of our guests this question, what is your favorite quote about success?
My favorite quote about success is simple scales, complex fails. Yeah, that's my favorite one. Because guess who overcomplicates everything? Me and every other entrepreneur, right? When you're trying to do something yourself.
Yep. Analysis paralysis all the time.
Uh-huh.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I told you I wanted to speak with you selfishly, but I just think so many people will benefit from this conversation because I do appreciate your take on it. It's so unique, and I think you have such great points. So I'm excited to see what our audience does with it.
Good stuff.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And speaking of our audience, thank you so much again for tuning in today. We love bringing on guests like Caitlin, and we love providing these types of shows for you. And to continue doing that, we would love those 5-star reviews. We would love to subscribe on your favorite platform, subscribe on YouTube. It just really means the world to us. So please do that. Do it right now, actually. And then we will see you next week on another episode of The Aspiring Solopreneur. Take care.
Bye-bye.